minute, I would like to join you on a small, short journey, as time will allow. A journey that is short, but on two channels. One in terms of time, journey in time, and the second thing, it is in between scenarios. Certainly from the perspective of the Israeli Air Force that is in charge of the assault, offensive and defensive, and every day deals with 5 theaters at the same time in a reality in the Middle East that you all are very well aware of. Each day is very different from the other, and through this prism I will try to show you those stations in time and those scenarios I've talked about. And I cannot but talk about at this time when we are marking 50 years the 1967 Six-Day War. I'm not trying to be nostalgic, but in finding the differences, and there are many differences, versus countries 50 years ago, the military organizations, things are very clear and very complex. There is great variance in what we are experiencing today and what I assume we'll be experiencing in future. So the first stop in time that I would like to touch upon is today, here, the present. And that is the war in between wars. This situation has two very clear characteristics. What are we trying to achieve? First of all, we are combating terrorism each and every day, each and every hour, close to our borders, far away from our borders, in different signatures. That's the first thing. The second thing is, and it's been said by the General Chief of Staff yesterday, that we are intensively preventing the empowerment of our enemies, their armament, and because we are looking at current threats and also evolving threats, emerging threats, and are taking action against them. In general, just very abstractly, these are our two main goals. In terms of opportunities, we are looking strategically at the arena, at the variance and diversification, and there is an encounter, there's a meeting point between interests. I would say it is extraordinary and perhaps irregular between the state of Israel and the states in the region in terms of combating terrorism. It is unique. Here, from the military perspective, the IDF and its intelligence arms and branches, and particularly the Israeli Air Force, there is a very significant role to be played in an area that we might call aerial diplomacy. It sounds a little strange, perhaps, but it's the ability, at the end of the day, to realize Israel's interests and support the interests of other partners in the region, to allow ground for collaboration and action. And the Israeli Air Force plays a key role in this. And this really is the opportunity. But our enemies also have opportunities. And under the auspices of this situation, the current state of affairs in the Middle East, which is chaotic in a sense, and superpowers and many players, there are processes here that are very intense of weapons and proliferation of weapons, and we are advancing to, we don't want certain people to be in possession, certain organizations to be in possession of these weapons. What are our challenges? Which challenges lie ahead? Well, we are engaging in these issues for a long time already, but the component that has guided us most significantly and has created the greatest dilemma is how can we preserve and maintain our operative effectiveness in these operations so that the outcome they have is our achievement, is what we want to achieve, while at the same time being disinclined to have acceleration or deterioration of the situation. We don't want to go to war if we are required to do so. I'll talk about that in a moment. But we want to be determined, we want to be effective in the actions we take under the threshold of deteriorating to war, and that is a huge dilemma. We have been facing this dilemma for several years, and every situation has a risk for human life, a risk of of acceleration, of escalation. And when we look at the last year or so, I think that certain parameters have come into play that turn this situation, turn this dilemma that I have presented as far more complex. Far more complex. Because we want to maintain our freedom of action. We don't want to cause harm to those we don't want to cause harm to. And I don't need to tell you that the skies in the Middle East are very crowded, much more crowded than ever before. There are many players, many actors. Not everyone speaks the same language, not everyone has the same direction and intentions. But it's not just the skies, the same is true for the ground. A bomb can meet a target, and we cannot allow this target to be harmed, to have people harmed there that we did not intend to harm. It's always true for anyone who is uninvolved, but certainly for actors and players or people that are part of those who are very important in the area. And harming them could have dramatic strategic implications for the state of Israel, and that means this entire situation is much more complex. On the one hand, how do we continue to be effective with the right signature? How do we turn the Israeli Air Force, which is a huge hammer, to a scalpel, a surgeon's scalpel that performs very delicate work, and according to foreign sources, sometimes it works out, sometimes it is leaked, and often it is not leaked, which is very good, and to still meet the achievements. And how can we operate in this very crowded sky without getting into conflict, without doing harm that is not needed? Because it's not just tactical, operative, it's a strategic implication that may limit Israel's freedom of action. And it's not just a military matter, it's a strategic matter that has far more implications than simply the military prism. So I said it was a complex, and it certainly is, but it's not something that you can really plan ahead of time fully. And there are issues here where success and failure are seconds away from one another and are determined by an officer, rank, whatever rank, who is the end person. And it's a 1 second decision, and there's no room for mistakes, no room for error. You can make a mistake because that's life. And we must grapple with a very complex challenge to refrain from reaching these corners, to continue doing what we do on the right course, on the right path. And it's true on the operative military level, but definitely also on the strategic level. So that's one point. Our actions in this campaign between wars, this battle between wars, aside from removing challenges or evolving, emerging challenges, there is another effect that is very hard to measure, and we can only measure it retrospectively. The combination of what we do, the way that we do it, the outcome known to our enemies, to our rivals, very far reaching. We may make a mistake and we may reach an escalation. That is a risk we must take into account and try to minimize as much as possible. However, the other side sees what Israel is doing, how it is doing, its level of determination and persistence, and that is a strategic discourse in words and missiles that has meaning and significance. And the other side, or the other sides, parties, take this into consideration. Does that ensure us refraining from reaching war? One cannot ensure that or promise it, but I think that it certainly clarifies in a way that is unequivocal, not only about Israel's capabilities, but also its determination. And those who need to do the calculations will do them. So that's the first stop in time, the campaign between wars. The second stop in time is war. And at a certain time, we cannot predict exactly when. We don't do that in the Middle East, but we see that one side or other sides can miscalculate, and quite easily war might be waged that nobody wanted. In terms of militarily speaking, we need to provide the responses. The IDF needs to provide strong, clear responses and be prepared. If we look at the strategic overall picture, I'll say it this way. As a result of what is happening primarily in Syria, but not only there, there are many elements here, many factors that are busy trying to achieve their goals in Syria, but also elsewhere, who have an interest, I assume, That is to restrain the possibility of war breaking out between Israel and Hezbollah or others. Because it will get in the way, may get in the way, as they see it, in the way of other efforts. And for us, this is an opportunity. I'm not saying war is an opportunity, war is not an opportunity, but we have an opportunity because we have time to prepare and to get stronger. And I will tell you exactly what needs to be done. They are busy with their own affairs. They don't want to be disturbed. That is a given, and I think it is very restraining, and it allows us to prepare and to get stronger in defense, to get stronger in offense, and to be ready when the time comes. It is a period of time that should be used well, and I can't tell you when this period of time will expire. The second thing is that these restraining factors that I have described that have an interest to restrain matters, if a war is to break out, if it will not evolve much because those restraining factors, I would assume, their interest will not change, and in the event that war breaks out, they will continue to restrain it. What does that mean, apropos the challenges that we are facing? That I am certain that if war breaks out on the northern front, we need to take action, strong action, from the word go. In order to achieve the goals, wars should always be shortened. But certainly if there are restraining factors, we should certainly open or start out very strongly and to make good time and return, fight back and achieve our goals. And most of this power is aerial. Not only, but mostly aerial. So what do? How can we enhance and boost and bolster this capability? And I'll tell you what we've done, or what we are doing. I will look at 3 areas. As I've said, offensive and defensive. The quality. How can we improve the quality? First and foremost, based on intelligence. We have a very good intelligence community with many capabilities. The next thing is to develop our lethalness, our lethality, very prominently, and also in terms of quality. We need to target very accurately. We need to hit targets that previously were not hit. Quality. The next parameter is quantity, scope. This has meaning. How productive can we be at a certain point of time, on 2 levels, on 3 levels. We are on a journey 4-5 years down the line in which we have taken our capabilities, and I'm saying quantitatively speaking, and have doubled them or actually quadrupled them, meaning only quantitatively. Aside from the quality I talked about before, what we have been able to do in quantity in the Second Lebanon War, just in terms of quantity, we can do it between 48 and 60 hours. And now double the quantity with the quality that I talked about before. It is power that is not linear in its development and involvement. It is actually a step function, and that's the first 2 parameters. The third parameter is the ability to create or generate action that has components, as I've said, qualitative and quantitative, that are very large, but it has other factors that will surprise our rivals in ways that they cannot even perceive or conceive, and we're working on that quite a lot. And what I said before about the campaign between wars, we also have the opportunity to check ourselves, to test ourselves, so that what I am saying is not just a theory. Some have already been tested and proven. We also won't forget our limitations and constraints. It's not just as if everything is fine. In the next war on the northern front, we, the Air Force, but not only the Air Force, will be required to fight under fire at our bases. certainly a factor that impacts us. We are investing a lot in our ability to function under any condition. And also on the Northern Front, we will need to have superiority in terms of our capabilities more than in Lebanon, because the enemy is equipping itself with capabilities. And these two factors, both of them together, fire on Air Force bases and threats on Air Force aircraft, these will not stop the Air Force, but they may impact our actions. I'm not just trying to be arrogant here, but I'm just saying that the tools that we're developing, our understanding of the threat, our analysis of the threat, more harshly than they really are. And I'm not saying that we're not going to be harmed. I'm not saying that our actions will not be in some way undermined here and there, but we cannot be stopped. We cannot be stopped in this huge machine, which is the sum of surprise, quality and quantity, will work. And don't misunderstand me. There's no magic solution. There's no magic spell. But it is a potential power that is inconceivable in its scope. It is far beyond anything we have ever seen, and a lot more than anyone would estimate. The third topic, which is a huge limitation, if there is such a lethal machine that can target so accurately, how can we maintain Israel's strategic freedom of action? We need to be able to be free in our actions militarily. This lethality has some potential of also damage to those who are uninvolved, who we do not want to cause harm to. Collateral damage, so to speak. For instance, the Lebanese civilians may be put in harm's way without our wanting to do so. And this limitation, too, is taken into consideration. I don't want to go into too much detail, but we are trying to minimize as much as possible. In any war, people that are uninvolved and we did not mean to harm will be in harm's way, and morally speaking, we want to make that collateral damage, so to speak, as small as possible, near zero, but I'm not deluding myself, it's not going to be zero. I do have good news, though, for the people of Lebanon. Since Hezbollah has decided to be in the urban areas, people know what is in their houses, in those closed-up apartments where people come every so often. They launch missiles and rockets from those apartments and other things. And if before the event, or as soon as they begin, the people of Lebanon were to leave these houses, they will not be in harm's way. We have potentially a lot of power, surprising power, that can be used from the world of preventive, of preemptive attack, apropos the Six-Day War, to a huge effort throughout the war itself that can be accompanied by IDF maneuvers, a tool so powerful that no one has ever known before, we haven't known before in the past. And this can indeed impact the way that we fight. It is a strategic, military and political issue. The third and last stop that I would like us to talk about is the longer range, the long term. It is the one of strategic turning points. I will give you two.
The first one is the issue of nuclear powers. The gaining of nuclear weapons in the Middle East is a turning point, and it is very significant for us. The second thing is the stability of the regimes, and I'm talking about the long run. I'm not talking about tomorrow morning, but the stability. We saw the Middle East in 2011 change dramatically. In 1979 in Iran, it also changed dramatically. Who can vouch that this will not happen again? This statement is very clear. But if we take the scope of weapons sales in the Middle East in recent years and in the coming years, the sum of sales is more than $200 billion. This is the top-notch weapons of world technology, Western and Middle Eastern. Most of these weapons, most of them, a vast majority of these weapons, It is in the responsibility, under the responsibility of the Air Force. This is weapons that could potentially be harmful for Israel, pinpoint attacks on Israel, and has to do with the Air Force's ability to gain supremacy in this area. This is not something to be reckoned with, because we could get up in 10 or 15 years and say, oops, we didn't take this into account. We didn't think about that. It slipped between our fingers. In order to build force vis-a-vis these potential powers and capabilities, it takes a long time and a lot of many resources. Our dilemma is how to preserve Israel's relative advantage for the long run. Looking for tomorrow and the following year is not enough. We need to look decades ahead. I don't have this apocalyptical projection here or vision where the entire Middle East would collapse within 10 years. That's not what I'm saying. But the cost of error in this case would be unsufferable for the state of Israel. And we need to look at those three time frames: here and now, preparing for war, and not being caught unprepared in case there are any significant changes in the Middle East. The response to these matters, our long-term vision, is of course the strategic alliance that we have with the United States, which is an asset in its military application. Of course, it has to do with the American military aid and the American support of the Israeli military. And if we connect that with the Israeli capabilities, and this conference is happening here today, at the same time when there is a quite famous exhibition in Le Bourget in France, where you see the military industries presenting some of their products, not all of them, but some of them. Some of these technologies are designated only to Israel. So the connection between those high-quality technologies and the state and the support that we have is the key of preserving our supremacy for several years and not to find ourselves lacking. In conclusion, in the campaign between wars, it has to be maximized both on a military and operational level, but also for the strategic level. I think there are issues here that reinforce Israel's strategic standing in the Middle East, and we are a tool in the hands of the political echelons that will enable them to reach their political goals. The second thing is that our preparedness for war is not just in the northern arena. The Air Force is responsible of all the arenas. We will continue strengthening our offense and defense when the time comes to use them, and of course preserving our relative advantage. This is something that we have to do every day. So you understand that we are quite segmented, that we do the here and now, prepare for tomorrow, and look far into the future. How can we do this? Well, that we have excellent people. I represent them here on this stage today. All throughout the IDF and my particular corps, the Air Force, we take the dreams and the needs and the difficulties and turn them into real capabilities guaranteeing life. Thank you very much.